this video, I'm at beautiful Castle Hedingham to put this MG Maestro 2-litre EFI through its paces. But I'm also here to talk about the Classic Loan project, of which this car is a member. This is a scheme where drivers, mostly between the ages of say 25 and 45, can borrow a car for an entire year, paying just the insurance cost, to get a feel, find out if classic cars are for them without having to spend a huge amount on buying a car. And it has encouraged a lot of people to make the leap into classic cars. People who previously had no mechanical knowledge have found their feet with cars such as these. So that's very interesting in itself. That scheme has no cost other than the insurance, and I think it's a brilliant way to encourage people to have a go with classics. So do check the description below. This video isn't sponsored, but the car has been supplied by the project and I'm very grateful for that. So let's jump into Maestro history. We've already covered that fairly succinctly with the Maestro 1.3 City I drove. This is the other end of the scale. This is the sporty MG. So what do you get on a sporty MG? You get a rather snazzy grille with the MG Octagon. You get a chin spoiler. Ooh. You get sexy alloy wheels. Yummy. And of course, you cannot have a hot hatch without a bit of spoiler action on the back with strakes up the side. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I mean, the Maestro is a car that was always thwarted slightly by its somewhat dumpy looks. So the MG was an attempt to put some of the excitement back. Now we're motoring Austin Rover. And yes, this car is owned by a member of the Maestro Montego Owners Club. So shout out to those people. I love what they do looking after cars that are very important to me. My dad had a Montego, which was the first car I drove after passing my driving test. And this really does put me back in mind of that. Notice the tiny reverse lights here, but huge glass area. But the styling by Ian Beach under David Bache, who styled the P6 and the Rover P5 as well, hasn't really stood the test of time all that well. You got the strange scalloping down the side, which never made any sense then and still doesn't make any sense today. But this one, beautiful shade of metallic blue. It's a really nice car. So 1 year after MG died in its original form, 1981, the last year of MGB production, MG launched the Metro. The badge was applied to a hot hatchback. And that was seen by some people as a negative step, but it's worth remembering that even in the pre-war era, MG was building sporty Morrises effectively. So it was kind of an evolution of that theme. But the MG Maestro was launched with a terrible engine in 1983, the 1.6 R series, which was really just an E series, the engine out of the Allegro, but in a slightly different capacity. And it had twin Weber carburetors, which were generally absolutely hopeless. Didn't stay in tune for very long. There was a very brief period where the S series, which had a rubber timing belt rather than a timing chain, replaced that engine. Just baffling engine work at British Leyland, what was now turning into Austin Rover. But this has the O series engine, which is an evolution of the B series engine, but with an overhead cam, rubber timing belt, and importantly, electronic fuel injection. It's also got programmed ignition control, made in the UK. So this did away with carburetors. You got much more reliable fuel injection and a useful power boost as well. There was now power to take this car to 60 miles an hour in 8.4 seconds compared to 9.6 for the earlier 1.6 MGs, and onto a top speed of about 120 miles an hour. Exciting stuff. And that was, you know, on a par with all the other hot hatches at the time. The Volkswagen Golf is lauded, but this really offers a little bit more oomph. And this isn't even the most powerful of the MGs. There was the turbo as well, but they only built 505 of those. And to be honest, I think this is more Hubnut. They built a lot more of these 2-litre MGs. But yeah, there's the engine. It's conventional. It's got a end-on gearbox. Initially, the Maestro used Volkswagen gearboxes. It was such a clone of the Volkswagen Golf that they even used the same gearbox. But I think this has the Honda-derived PG1 gearbox. I could be wrong on that. But I mean, typical old style engine bay. You can get everything. There's so much space to work on the engine. Now the Maestro was always sistered up with the Montego, and the structure is the same. The Montego just has different front panels, a slightly longer snout, and has the wipers covered by the bonnet edge, but fundamentally the same car. It's got the same scallops, it uses the same doors. So, but the Maestro came first, and as mentioned, this is part of the Classic Car Loan Project in conjunction with Peter James Insurance. So this is a car that you could actually loan, so get in touch with them. They are looking for the next person to take this car on. They've got plenty of other cars too, but let's go and have a look inside. I've just realised you might want to look what the rest of the tower looks like. There you go, 14th century tower. Wonderful, but you can come and visit. So here inside, it's all a bit, yeah, the quality is not great. There's drumming sounds, and sadly that is a bit typical. I remember my dad's Montego being the same, but the dashboard was just a bit rattly in places and not particularly well built. And this is the improved dashboard that came later. It's a little distressing. The same switches that we found when we were test driving the last vehicle we drove, which was an LDV convoy van. The switchgear originates from these. But there's some very cool features though. You know, obviously we've got redness because it's sporty and MG. We haven't got red seat belts, which I'm quite disappointed by. But never mind. Digital clock, big ashtray over here, and down here, coin slot. The rear wiper controls hidden, and I don't think I've ever seen this before. I think that's the dashboard illumination adjustment. Don't think my dad's Montego had that. Got electric mirrors as well. This car has had a few upgrades, I think, fitted by the owner. It has an electric roof. I think it would have had a manual sunroof with a windy windy handle originally, but it now has an electric sunshine roof, which is great. The headlining is a bit saggy in places because that's kind of what they do. But fundamentally, actually a really nice place to sit. The wheel sits exactly where you want it. The seats are supremely comfortable. Sorry, I'll just move that out of the way. Well bolstered, really nice place to sit. And you can adjust the headrests as well, which is something I wish modern cars had. So you can have them further away if you'd rather, you can bring them forward. All marvellous stuff. And the column stalks, I won't be able to demonstrate this, but when you put lights on, I think this will have the ones that glow in the dark. And fibre optics, very clever. Indicator sounds like so. Nice proper indicator noise. And this one's done 126,000 miles, so it's not in the first flush of youth. Electric window switches down here, Philips radio cassette player, and the glove box over here with some cassettes in it. Oh, what we got? We have got Lionel Richie, Can't Slow Down. Hopefully we won't have such an issue and the brakes will work fine. But thanks Lionel for thinking of us. But yeah, I think it's quite nice in here. It's just, there are a few rattles when we start it up. Things start rattling around a bit, but nice snickety gearbox. And yeah, just a really comfortable driving position. Well, company headliner aside, there is just about enough headroom in here if the headliner was holding up. But just enough room behind me for my long legs. And excellent visibility because the glass area is absolutely enormous. But what's the boot like? And the answer is quite capacious. So there's a good amount of space there. We've got a bit of intrusion from the shock absorbers and the wheel arches, but overall not too bad. And I think we'll probably find under here, if I lift it up, yeah, a full-size spare wheel hiding underneath. Oh, isn't it tidy? Lovely. So yeah, that's all good. Of course, the proof of a hot hatch is in the driving. So let's fire her up. First free starting, thanks to fuel injection. But yeah, there's a few little trim rattles. But yeah, some rattling down there. Yeah, my dad's Montego was just the same. We do have a slight issue in this car, but the thermostat isn't working 100%, which means to keep it clear, I'm having to pop the sunroof open. But they didn't come from the factory like that. Hasten to point out. But yeah, huge thanks to them here at Castle Headingham for letting me pop in to do some filming today. Lovely place. I think the biggest problem for the Maestro wasn't necessarily the dumpy looks. They're, you know, not the strongest perhaps, but I think they do look good in MG form. No, I think the biggest problem is that the concept and the productionization was such a mess. You know, they launched it with an engine that was in use for just over a year. Why? They introduced it with a dashboard, which was even worse than this one, a proper piecemeal affair, which shook itself to bits almost instantly. So by the time the MGs really came on song, from late 1984, it was only 18 months since the Maestro had been produced. People were already turned off. Initially sales were quite strong in that first year, but I suspect reliability issues and problems with the earlier engines put a lot of people off and made them think twice about whether this was the car for them, so they went and bought a Golf instead, or even worse, an Escort. In fact, Escorts generally sold about 5 to 1 during the time of the Maestro, but Ford did have the all-important fleet market in its hand. Lovely tractable engine, beauty of fuel injection, and it was actually more fuel efficient than the old twin carb setup as well. You could expect sort of low 30s mpg, which was a bit of a pipe dream for the twin carb versions. Oh yeah, when you put your foot down, it makes all the right sort of noises. You can almost hear the individual beats as the engine starts sucking hard for oxygen. Yeah, there's a proper meatiness to it. Yeah, but speed builds really nicely. Of course, by the standards of its time, by modern standards, 8.4 seconds is nothing to shout out about at all. But it's the mid-range shove and the tractability that are really impressive. As is the ride. The ride's a little jiggly compared to stock, a little bit firmer in the MG. But yeah, so easy to place. The steering is really well geared. So you have good confidence in it. It hangs on well. Yeah, it hardly feels related to the 1.3, which is just enough power to get moving, but you wouldn't describe a 1.3 as fun. Yeah, that is an engine, you just want to let it sing. Oh, this is like going on a date with Doris and finding out she wants to go clubbing. Yeah, this is an entertaining steer, and that's what's even more disappointing, is that the fundamentals of the Maestro are so good, and yet the management somehow managed to ruin it anyway. The unions also, because they went on strike just weeks after the new car had been launched. But it was a dark moment for British motor industry, from which it never really recovered. But they were hoping to sell something like 200,000 of these a year, and production levels were never anywhere near. They always languished at the bottom of the sales charts. And these cars were always developed by people who know what makes a car good to drive. The chief engineer behind it is Spen King. Spen King gave us the Rover P6, and then showed his real merit by making the Rover SD1 pretty much as good, with none of the complication. The P6's suspension is just crazy. Bell cranks and independent de Dion rear suspension, and Spen King realised he could do all that with just coils and springs, which is exactly what I did with the SD1. And again, the brief with this car, they could have gone hydrogas. That was mooted. Obviously, Dr. Alex Moulton, the designer of that, really wanted them to use it. But Spen King knew simplicity was the key. And he's made a car that's agile, comfortable, and fun to drive. And it, the ingredients aren't in any way exotic. And I think in some ways that's the real genius of the man. Given free rein, he could do amazing things, but when it came to being constrained by cost, he could actually make things work. Now, the Maestro did live on in China for quite a long time, with a Montego nose, weirdly, but UK production finally came to an end in 1994. There were some Bulgarian kits brought over by Ledbury and Apple around the turn of the century. But otherwise, yeah, the Maestros were killed off pretty swiftly once BMW took control of Rover in 1994. They couldn't really believe these cars were still in production. But the Maestro did build up a loyal following. People who just wanted a simple car that got them where they wanted to go. That's exactly what this car was built for. Be a bit careful, there's a lot of mud on the road at the moment, but yeah, this is great. Of course, compared to the City, this has power steering, and it is light, but it doesn't leave you wondering what the front wheels are doing. And note, I'm not really having to rev the engine that much. Just keeping it in the sort of the mid-range where all the torque is. You can build speed really nicely. Oh, I'm forgetting myself. We haven't done a windscreen wiper test. Let's do that. Oh, they're a bit slow. And a bit poor, I'm going to say. Triangular doom the size of Japan there. And this blade doesn't even get near the edge of the windscreen. So there we go. That is the MG Maestro 2-litre EFI as available on the Classic Loan project right now. Do go and check them out. Obviously they vet people before deciding who is allowed a car. You must have a garage, but it's a great scheme and it offers so much. But yeah, nice to finally drive an MG Maestro. I've been waiting a long time for that. So thank you to the scheme for letting me have my day at long last. I really like it. There is so much to like about the Maestro. You can forgive it the somewhat frumpy looks because it's a lot better than you might expect, and also tends to be a lot cheaper than some of its competition even today. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget you can head to the Hubnut store if you want to buy lovely merchandise, and I shall see you in a future video. Farewell. The magic of the octagon.